So I'm just going to go over some of the things that I think are important to keep in mind when playing Arena Directs. The first thing is the way that sealed is different than other formats in the way that people are ahead or behind in games. Something I've realized is that when you're playing a game of sealed and you start to have a feeling like you're ahead, a useful question to ask can be, what if my opponent has a rare here, and how would I feel about that? Because something I think that happens commonly in sealed, and one of the things that frustrates people in sealed is people think they're ahead, their opponent plays a really good rare, and then they lose, and they're like, that's sealed, that's dumb. But as I've played more sealed, I've realized that the rares define so much a part of the gameplay because people will really build their decks around them. And like, I'll give a quick example. Like, a common situation in sealed that will happen is your opponent's not really playing to the board. They're kind of falling behind. Their draw seems weak. So you start to feel ahead. And then they play a card like a 7-drop, like Ugin or Moment of Reckoning, or a really big United Front, or something of that sort. Um, so it kind of goes hand in hand. Like, the fact that your opponent's not developing to the board or not having a lot of good early plays can kind of imply that, you know, obviously it makes sense. Maybe they have a 7-drop, so that's why they didn't do stuff. But also, they might have kept a hand that wasn't that good on the back of the fact that they had a 7 mana thing. And yeah, so I just found that's useful. Also, because usually in most Magic formats, when you start to feel ahead, you start being like, okay, you want to play a little bit conservatively. You're like, okay, I want to protect my life total so I don't die to damage out of nowhere, or I don't want to play too much to the board and extend my board and then just have them sweep it. But something I've noticed sometimes, and it depends on the format, but it can almost be the opposite in when you start thinking, okay, what if my opponent has a scary bomb? That might almost make you want to play more aggressively because you might be like, well, like, if in a position where you're headed, maybe you're more likely to lose it on playing a bomb. So you might want to attack with your creatures a little bit more aggressively and be like, actually, my life total isn't the thing that I'm the most scared of here. I should attack them more aggressively. Or, maybe if you're playing a format and especially if there's not a lot of board wipes in the colors they're playing, or there's just more bombs like United Front than board wipes, you might be like, actually, the reason I want to keep developing to the board is even though I'm ahead on board, if they play a bomb like United Front, like a Moment of Reckoning, I pushed the pedal even harder. So that's just quickly what I wanted to say about rares. Captain Marvel's another thing, but yeah, that's a big thing about Seal. Just realizing that, like, if you start thinking you're ahead, it's not that uncommon that your opponent's going to play a good bomb, and just keep that in mind. It'll make it so that you're more able to accurately assess if you actually are ahead or behind, and being more scared of the threats of them casting bombs rather than tempoing you. Obviously, it matters. Obviously, sometimes you are more scared of damage or whatever. It's all contextual, but obviously, I'm generally speaking. Then just like basic, sort of housekeeping steps is you really want to know all the instants that are legal, all the board wipes, and also discard effects, stuff like that. Instance matters a lot because they print more flash creatures these days. Sometimes you'll be like, should I attack here or not? I don't know what flash creatures they could have. Just pays mind to know that. I remember in the last set Marvel, I attacked with like a pretty good 2/2 bomb, and my opponent played the 3 mana instant that makes a villain at instant speed, so it wasn't even a creature, just made a token at instant speed. But yeah, useful to know that, especially the counter spells, just very basic stuff. Same with discard effects. Sometimes, like, let's say you have 2 cards in hand. If there's a lot of cards that say discard 2 in the format, then maybe you want to play out a land. But maybe if there's a lot of like Ravenous Rat effects, then you might want to hold it. So just being aware of like what kind of discard effects, because it's pretty common that it'll be late in the game and you'll have to make a choice of like whether you should hold a land or play it, and it will matter. And like usually the reasons to play the land is if you have a lot of card draw in your effect, like divinations, then that will make you want to have more lands in play. But maybe if you have landfall cards, then you'd rather have your land in your hand. And again, keeping these Ravenate Rats type cards in mind because they do matter. They're played a lot. And similar to knowing what instants are legal, knowing what board wipes are legal, it's just very useful to know. If you're, like I alluded to earlier, if your opponent's not developing to the board, usually you might be like, oh, maybe they have a board wipe. But if you just know there's no board wipes in the color they're playing, then you can be aggressive, and maybe it's because they have a card like an Ugin, and it's actually quite important to be aggressive there. So it's very useful to know the board wipes in the format, similarly to like flash creatures. Then I would say you want to be comfortable doing counterintuitive things. um, it's a pretty obvious cliche that you can get a lot of edge when you know when to break the rules. They say you need to know the rules to break the rules. That's the cliche. Um, but I've realized it in Magic, like usually when you have an understanding of why you should do something counterintuitive, you can get a really big edge. Um, And what I mean by that more materially is like I I'll give an example is like recently I was playing an Avatar sealed direct and I had a 4 color soup deck and I had a few ally rares in my deck. And I was like, well, I guess I should just play my ally rares because I can cast them anyway. I'm playing 4 colors, and it just seems too hard not to play my rares. But when I really thought about my deck, I was like, honestly, I'd rather just have just a random removal spell because the way my soup deck was really winning was just kind of more with card advantage, removal, and even though these rares were powerful, they didn't fit super well in my deck because they were like I didn't have that many allies. And like also one thing is because like when a deck has a lot of removal, sometimes you start valuing card advantage more, right? Like what I mean to say is like imagine if you're playing a black red deck and your black red deck just has like a million murders and lightning strikes. You'd much rather have your threat be like like a creature that when it enters draws a card, so it's hard for your opponent to use removal, than just have like an efficiently statted creature because yeah, that's just kind of obvious, I guess. But like sometimes you like see an efficiently static creature and you're like, this card's so good, I need to play it. But sometimes if you're like, well, my deck really has so much removal, I'd rather just have my threats be more card advantage, whatever. The basic point here is just like if you really understand, like I find I do best in the sealed when I feel like I can do counterintuitive things because I really understand like what my deck's trying to do, really playing to the strengths of my cards. Like it's obvious that you get a lot of edge when you understand. I'm trying to think how to say this. Like most Magic cards kind of exist in a context, right? Like a card like Entomb, that's the 1 mana card that puts a creature in your graveyard, or 1 mana instant that puts a creature in your graveyard. That card's really powerful with Reanimate. So it's obvious if you have Entomb, if you have Reanimate, it's really powerful. Whatever. A lot of what I'm trying to say is a lot of Magic cards are contextual. A lot of times people think about cards as good and bad, but the cards can be good. Like a card that's bad can be good in a certain type of context. I mean, Lion's Eye Diamond would be a famous example. That card would be bad in draft, but if you have an Infernal Tutor, then it's good and constructed, right? So I guess what I'm trying to say is a lot of times intuitively you'll have feelings that this card's good, this card's bad, but when you really think about the strategy of your deck, what your deck's trying to accomplish, then you can really build toward what your deck's trying to do rather than an abstract idea of what you want to do. And often it's like really, it'll feel like you're kind of pushing against your intuition, kind of, because it's like, yeah, I don't want to play this card because it's bad. But if you can think through, well, the reason this card's normally bad, but in my deck it's good because X, Y, Z, or like it's like I really want to play this card because it's really good, but you're like, even though this card's really good, it doesn't really fit my deck because of X, Y, Z. Like an easy way to frame it is with splashing. Normally, let's say you're playing a black red deck, and you're splashing green. Usually the a rule of thumb for splashing is you want to splash cards that are good to draw in the late game because often if you draw the card in the early game, you won't be able to reliably cast it until the late game. So, for example, a card like Badger Mole Club, most people will intuitively know, like, even though that card's strong, it's not a great card to splash because often it'll be the last card you cast. And that's kind of an example where it's like, you might be like, oh, I have Badger Mole Club, I should really play it, but knowing, like, okay, I don't want to really splash cards that aren't as good in the early game can help. And there'll be cards that are kind of more in the middle, like cards that are really strong, but you also have an understanding that it's not really strong unless you're playing it early in the game. Another thing that comes up is pace of play. Um, Part of it is the mechanics of thinking it through, but part of it's also just the brain trying to save energy. So what I mean to say is like the example I gave last time was like, let's say you're in a game and you have a line that's 99.5% to win the game, or and it'll take place right now. So the game will just end right now, 99.5%. Or you can take a line that's 100% to win the game, but then you have to play for an additional 5 minutes. This is actually kind of a difficult decision that can come up in Magic, and um, often when you're playing like in a direct, your brain might be like, don't spend the 5 minutes, just take the chance, try and get the game over, get more runs, whatever. And a way to frame it is like, imagine if you're playing the World Championship Finals, obviously you'd go for the 100% line. But if you're playing a match that you don't care about as much, like a random direct, or just a random Magic game, then you'll be like, oh, I'd rather just do that 99.5% line. And but I found that like when you do that 99.5% line and then you lose from it, you can feel really bad, especially if you're playing, for boxes, whatever. So that's just something I keep in mind. That's kind of like your brain will often be like, this game's not that important. Don't, be that diligent. But it's fine to be diligent, if you pretend you're playing the World Championship Finals or whatever. But that's something I'm constantly battling because I'll constantly be in a game and I'll try and like think things through quickly. Another thing is sometimes I'll be building a sealed pool and it'll be taking a while, like 40, 50 minutes. Like it'll be taking a while. And I'm like, oh, I'm wasting time. Like if I was in the queues, I could just be playing. And the way that I've kind of framed that is like I'd rather, just try and focus on maximizing my win rate. And if I'm just building pools quickly and losing from that, it's going to hurt my win rate. A lot of capturing the expected value is in getting a higher win rate. Obviously, you could just mathematically do like, um, would I rather play faster and have a lower win rate or play slower and have a faster win rate? But I've also found that like if I start thinking, yeah, I'll play faster and have a lower win rate, that just leads to me being sloppy. So, and maybe losing motivation to play. Like I'll be like, so because of that, I'm fine playing slow, even though it can be counterintuitive at times. You might feel a pressure to play faster. I find that like talking through decisions, stuff like that can be useful. Like another thing is sometimes to emulate that kind of world championship final thing is I'll try and pretend I'm recording the games I'm playing, so I have to talk through my lines. That'll force you to slow down, force you to talk through the decisions rather than just playing as quickly. Yeah, and a really important thing for all Magic events is staying calm. Very important. Um, and some of the main facets I've realized of it come down to being able to move forward from making mistakes. Like you can all imagine, you play the first round of a tournament, you make a stupid mistake, and you're like, yeah, I guess this tournament's not for me, and you're kind of mentally checked out. Um, so something I've realized to try and move forward from mistakes is often I'll try and write them down when it happens, because if I don't write them down, it'll just kind of bounce around in my head. It'll haunt me. But if I write it down, I can externalize it, get it out of me. Maybe like you play a match that was really close, and you feel like you lose it, and you feel like maybe you could have won if you do something differently. It kind of haunts you. I'll just go back, try and watch the replay, try and really look at what the key decisions were, try and really get it out of the system so that I can move on. Another thing is with morale. Sometimes you just aren't that much in the mood to play Magic. You're not really that interested. Um, but you also maybe want to just do a certain amount of runs in a day. So something I'll do is, try and think about your favorite Magic memories, try and think about the favorite deck lists. For me, that might be Grixis Delver. Maybe even watch a feature match, watch LSV do a cube, something that puts you back in the mood, because then it can get you more excited to play again. And not just thinking about the number of runs you do. That was related to like maybe say, okay, today my plan is to do 4, 5, 6 runs, something like that. Because if you don't have like a specific goal, then you might feel like you're never off. You're always like, I could be doing more runs, but also I need to relax. It's hard to balance. So just saying like, okay, today I'm gonna try and do I'm gonna try and do 6 runs, or even like a lot of runs. Then you can focus on that. And yeah. And let me think if I have anything more to add on this last part. Yeah, I mean, the keeping the morale up is important. Like, it relates to being aware of just your emotional state. Like, sometimes you're playing directs and you're just not really in the mood to play. Or, like, sometimes I'll, like, lose a game and I'll be like, okay, I'm going to go to sleep. But actually, I want to play one more game just to win the game. And just being aware of, like, when you are in that mood of, like, just trying to play kind of a revenge game. You know what I mean? You're like, I'll just play a game until I win. It's just, like, being aware that, like, okay, what's my actual goal here? My goal is to get as high a win rate as possible. That's not going to help me. And yeah, so that's most of what I would have to say. So recapping, thinking about the res the opponent can have, being diligent to know the instance, Boardwipes, discard effects, etc. in the format. This also counts. This is mostly knowing the format at large. Yeah, being comfortable doing counterintuitive things, being flexible, uh, being aware of the pace of play. That like a lot of times you're gonna feel rushed to make decisions, so that you're not spending time. That's just a constant battle. But again, if you frame it as my goal is to have a higher win rate, that can help you to slow down a bit. Or your goal is to be like, I want to talk through my decisions and explain it. Because if you're like, okay, I'm going to pretend I'm streaming, I'm going to try and talk through all my decisions, then you won't feel like it's a waste of time to be diligent, to really talk through your choices, and really talk about why you're making a 100% play instead of a 99.5% play. And yeah, staying calm, very important, very easy to tilt, moving forward from mistakes, keeping morale up, all that.